welcome to Grad Chat. I hope you're doing well. I'm Andy. I'm here impersonating a vlogger in my bedroom. Grad Chat is going to be a weekly podcast as part of the new bonus features section on MyUCA, set up by myself and Emma Reyes. Thank you, Emma. Where I will be talking to a graduate who has studied film production at UCA as part of their journey into the industry. We're going to talk about the highs and lows of graduate life. We're going to talk about people's journeys into the industry, and we'll get a few tips along the way for students still studying at UCA and students that are graduating this summer. Emma is a filmmaker from Liverpool. She was actually in my first group at university when I studied film production at UCA. So I felt like it was a very good place to start. Emma is currently studying at NFTS, the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield, where she is in the second year of a 2-year course in directing, one of only 8 directors that get into the NFTS every year. We had a lovely chat. We talk about her time at UCA, her passion for directing, the internships that she completed after she graduated, the highs and lows of graduation, all the way to her decision to go into higher education and do a 2-year master's course. Along with that, we also talk about looking after your mental health while working in the industry. We talk about HIIT exercises and the motorway. Don't expect Larry King or Oprah in these first few. I might get to that standard after a little while, but let me sort of bed in. Be nice to me. This interview is the second interview I think I've ever done. The first interview, where I was interviewing a football manager, I started by saying good evening, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. So I feel like I've already stepped up from that. But give me time to settle in to this role as interviewer. So without further ado, here is Emma firstly talking about her time at UCA.
So my name's Emma Gilbertson, and I graduated from UCA in 2017, and I was in Andy's year. Just shortly after I graduated, I accidentally made a good film, which was called Crashing Waves.
No skill involved. Pure accident.
I actually will go into that later about why it accidentally was a good film, but also why it wasn't. But I got commissioned by random acts to make that film, and I then began studying at NFTS in winter 2018. So when I came to UCA, I wanted to be a cinematographer, and the first project I did was actually with Andy, and we did a little documentary called The Jukebox. I made a few different films and I tried out a few different roles. I was interested in cinematography and screenwriting, but in second year, I just felt this kind of growing urge in me to direct. And I wanted to try, I don't know why, but I just really got it in my head that I wanted to make social realism films. And since leaving UCA, I just realised I really don't want to make social realism films. But I did a lot of stuff, and I experimented with animation and documentary and dance and fiction, obviously. I actually was a cinematographer. Well, I was a camera operator for Fact into Fiction. I don't know if that's still a unit.
2.2 now.
So on 2.2, I was a cinematographer, and I just was doing it, and I just realised I hated it. I was like, this is very heavy. And I also just didn't have the eye for light at all. It's very technically difficult. And I was looking at my director who was working with the actors, and all I was thinking about was, I wish I was doing that. We then had to pick our options, not options, that's like GCSE level, isn't it? But we picked what we wanted to specialise in. And directing just seemed to be the one because it fit all of my interests. And I just really, really wanted to be telling stories. I do like writing, but I wanted to be doing something active. So it just seemed like a natural fit that I was drawn towards.
And then in your graduation film, Decked, which you directed, and you brought a whole crew up to your home city, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh man. Decked was great and awful at the same time, in the sense that I think if I could go back and tell myself something, I realise all of you are about to graduate, so this is not going to be useful to you guys, but maybe it'll be useful in the future. But what I learned through Decked was you really can make a simple film. And Decked was not simple, and it could have been. It was really about the relationship between two brothers, and I wasn't focused on what the essentials of what that story was. Instead, I was focused on the aesthetic and really got it into my head that I had to shoot in Liverpool, and I didn't have to shoot that film in Liverpool, so that wasted a lot of money. And I was like so sure it had to be set in 1960s. It didn't have to be set in 1960s, and they were like aesthetic things that end up being very expensive. Whereas if I was to approach that film now, I probably would modernize it, and I'd probably have less extras in it, and I'd shoot it near school, because I mean, like, film is about illusion, right? So it's we are creating illusions with pictures and making it feel real. So, but like I say, at that point in time, I was just very interested in. I thought I was really interested in pursuing social realism films, and I'm not. What I learned on that project is you can be very truthful about what you're talking about and your version of the world, but you don't have to do it in like a social realist way. I think as long as you're telling your truth, you can tell it however you want, because it'll still ring true. And that was something that I definitely learned through that project. And then in my independent practice, which probably has a different name now, is it like Free One or something?
They're now known as B projects.
Yeah, so I did a dance project in my B project, and then I did another dance project through Random Acts. Mm-hmm. And I feel like those projects were really truthful, but they weren't told in a conventional way. And I think that was something that it took me quite a long time to really understand that I could do that. But that was something I think I was discovering towards the end of my journey at UCA. So I only could learn that through the 3 years at UCA.
So when you graduated, talk to me about Random Acts. How did you get the ball rolling with that?
Yeah, so Screen South, they, I guess, were like our executive producers on the Random Acts project. They'd come to the school and they were talking about creating stories only you could tell. And they kind of summarized that as your truth in an unconventional way. So I had an idea in my mind, which was about two working class guys dancing on an estate, and they were gay. And it just kind of came into my head instantly, and I was like, okay, I really want to make that. So I applied with Amir Majlesi and Ryan Shaffi, and then we got commissioned, and we made the film. And for a long time, we didn't really think anything was going to happen with it. We thought it might go online. Just jumping off that for a second, in between that time, I took on 2 internships, and it was almost a year later when I heard when Crash and Wave started to do well. Mm-hmm. So, because I think it definitely looks like, if you were to read it, you'd be like, oh, that film did really well. But it was actually quite a difficult year in between making the film and then it being picked up by festivals. It was a very long time.
So you graduated. And then, did you move back home?
Yeah, I moved back home. It was weird, actually. There was a long time period where I couldn't afford to stay in Farnham, and then I went back home, and I was travelling between Farnham and Liverpool to make Crash and Waves, whilst also working in a pub in Liverpool. We finished making Crash and Waves, and it was the beginning of 2018, and I got 2 internships, which were very different. One was I was a editing and videographer assistant. The other job I was doing was reading scripts and reviewing them with Hurricane Films. One of which was through Screen South. They had this like Catalyst fund, which they basically were giving me it was like I had a tiny wage. It wasn't even enough to live on, but I did, at the videographer, I did like 3 days there a week. And then I did 2 days at Hurricane Films. That was quite tough because neither were paid, and that was really, really rough.
When did the NFTS kind of come into this? When did that catch your eye?
I was doing my internships, one of which I really enjoyed, which was the one at Hurricane Films. I was learning so much about story there and about my own personal taste and like bad habits that exist in a lot of scripts, just because I was reading so many. I got to March, and I also was doing like other runner jobs at CBBC and just feeling very undervalued, and I was getting rejected. Like, I actually applied twice for the Channel 4 apprentice scheme, got rejected from that, and then because I didn't have a driving license, that was also like a massive thing as well. I have one now, and I have a car called Barbie. I know.
How was that the reason why? Did you get?
It might have been. It might have been my terrible personality. Who knows? But either way, it was very difficult, and I was just in one of the internships that I just absolutely despised. If you could please cut out when I said the name before, because I don't.
I'll bleep it. Yep, go on.
You can mention Hurricane Films. Hurricane Films are good.
Yep.
The other one,
Uh-huh.
I was in the internship I didn't like, and I was just like, I just hate this. I just hate like doing this, and to me, it felt like a very natural. The next step seemed to be to go to NFTS. I say that like I didn't think I'd get in. I was terrified because like it is quite difficult to get into. When you look at the amount of applications versus the amount of people that get in.
Was it further education that tempted you, or the NFTS?
I don't think I would have done a master's at another school. I'd always wanted to go to NFTS, but you know, education's not for everyone. Like once you finish at UCA, you might not want to go into higher education, but for me, it felt like the right choice because I felt I had so much to learn. And I knew I wanted to be a director because I was just so miserable when I wasn't writing and I wasn't directing. Even when I was doing like these, like when I was reading scripts and writing about them and stuff, I still wasn't completely satisfied. And it is just a notoriously like hard industry to get into, even if you're not a director. So for me, it was the right choice. And I think something that I didn't do enough of when I was at UCA was actually watch films. Like I didn't watch enough films when I was at UCA.
You mentioned there that you had some running jobs for CBBC and some of it. So was this on-set work?
Yes.
How did you find the adjustment from working on student films and directing student films to then being a runner?
It's harsh. It's a harsh reality because you'll go from like being the boss to a degree to people don't care, like especially with runner positions, because they just get people in and out all the time, and they might have a core crew that's there for 12 weeks shooting a TV program, and you come in for like a few days and they will give you the crap jobs that no one wants,
such as
turning a generator. Sorry, I don't know if it's called a generator, but essentially like it takes all the hot air out of a set and then sends it outside. The studio we were on, it got so hot because there was so many lights and it was very small. So they had this machine that like would suck all the air out and take it outside. But anyway, it was really loud. So I would be turning it on and off for like 11, 12 hours whilst, yeah, it was not fun. Yeah, some people are rude. They are, but you get that everywhere. But I think it was just a harsh reality check. And I did have a few doubts here and there about whether I really, really wanted to be in this career. Because the truth is, sadly, you will not step out into a paid directing role. Like, I still haven't had a paid directing job. So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, you have to love cinema. I met Anthony Chen. Well, I say I met him. He did a class with us a year or two ago, and he asked a question. He was like, how faithful are you to cinema? And it kind of stuck in my head because it's like, if you want to be a director or a writer, and I'm just speaking about them roles because that's what I am, so I can only really speak from that experience, but you have to want it, and it has to be in your blood, and you have to almost be like obsessive about it because it's just not easy. You have to question yourself about why you're doing things. Are you doing it because you want to show the truth of the world, or are you doing it because you want to make money? And there's no right or wrong answer, but you have to know. And if you're truly faithful to cinema, you will, I hope, I say this because I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping that eventually I will be. And yeah, it's not easy. Like, it can be soul destroying. Sorry, maybe I'm just speaking too blasé now.
No. It's good, you know, because I feel like there's so many different paths out there, and hopefully in these podcasts we'll talk to a lot of people that went on lots of different paths. So you, for example, have gone into higher education. Talk to me about the adjustment from being on set to then being at the NFTS, a very prestigious master's degree course.
I mean, I really liked NFTS because I felt respected, like pretty much as soon as I got there, in a way which made me feel like a total imposter, actually. Because the difference between being on set and like no one really cares, and then I was at NFTS and they have 8 directors, and basically you're guaranteed to direct 3 films.
Did you feel sort of almost relieved that you had found something that suited you?
Yes, because I mean, in between UCA and NFTS, there was like a year and a half, nearly 2 years. Mm-hmm. So that was like quite a low point because I was just struggling, and I was just trying to do anything to get any sort of experience to put on my CV, and it was just emotionally quite frustrating because I felt like I didn't stop, but it was such slow progress. And I think I would say, set a goal in mind, but don't be surprised if it takes 2 or 3 times longer than you expect. And also don't be disheartened because you don't have to be in a rush, like things will happen. Yeah, just set yourself a goal and go after it.
I feel like that's a really important message, especially, in a time when a global pandemic can spring up out of nowhere. It may be a tricky time over this summer for the whole industry, not just for graduates. You sort of touched on the highs and lows. How do you look after your mental and your physical health?
I don't think I did look after my mental health in that year and a half, but I do now. Yeah, I don't think I did look after my mental health, but I think I was also way too concerned with what other people were doing. So I was like speaking to my friend the other day, and he was talking about you can be focused on the business or the craft. And like if you're focused on the business, maybe you care about too much what other people are doing. And it's really easy to slip into, So I deleted Instagram and I deleted all my social media, and I deactivated Facebook, and because I just realized I was focusing on the wrong things, and they aren't the things that make you happy. Whereas if you focus on the craft, focus on the filmmaking, it does help a lot. I think physical health and mental health are actually related. And you have to, before you pursue anything to do with film, you really need to make sure that you're looking after yourself. So like, for example, with the pandemic, like make time to go outside for a walk, try not to get hung up on what the future will be, try and stay present, be grateful for what you have around you and not for what you're potentially missing out on. Because I think I used to focus too much on other things. I was not present, and I think I made myself miserable. And in these quarantine times, that's even more like stressful because you have more time to think in a way. Yeah, I started doing HIIT exercises recently. You ever done them?
No, go on, explain.
High intensity training.
Uh-huh.
It's absolutely brutal, but you feel great afterwards. So
what is it? Is it like a sort of Zumba type?
It's almost like a circuit. So you do like 30 seconds of an exercise, 25 seconds off. Yeah, but like I do like walking, but I don't really feel like I get a rush out of it. I don't get the endorphins to like.
You don't get the rush that cinema gives you.
Yeah, no, but I actually have been dreadful for looking after my mental health in the past, and put your mind and your body first, because you can't make films unless you do that. I mean, you can, but you might destroy yourself in the process, and I don't think any film's worth breaking a friendship over or destroying yourself over. It's just a film. Once you make it, it exists and it's as its own entity,
When you graduated, you sort of mentioned friendships sort of breaking and arguments in film career. I mean, we didn't argue in first year. We had a lovely time.
How could we argue?
What?
So in sync, we have the same topic. I think what's important to remember is when you're at UCA, like you're still developing. I still don't really know who I am. And I think when I was at UCA, I definitely didn't know who I was either. And you just got a load of people who want to make films together. And sometimes there's conflict. Actually, I think conflict can be useful, but it's about the right type of conflict. If you're conflicting about films, the film itself and the story and what it is, that's kind of good conflict. And being able, I think as a director in particular, you really, really have to get good at telling people how you feel about things. And you come at it from a place of love and caring and understanding, but those like mini disagreements, which will happen on every film set and every process of making a film, it's about how you handle it. And I think when I was younger, maybe I didn't necessarily handle it the best, but those things in the grand scheme don't really matter. And also the thing that you get from UCA that's most important, it's not your films, it is your connections. So it's always really, I think it's really important to try to protect the friendships and connections that you do make. And honestly, like if you had petty little things happen, they really don't matter in the grand scope of things. I know grad film in particular can be quite a painful process. It's okay. You will have grown exponentially during that whole process. Did that get what you wanted?
That did, yes. So in 3 points, be nice. What was the first thing that Claire Barwell was the head of course when me and Emma studied, and I think she stood up in front of everyone at the beginning of first year, first lecture, and she said, be kind and shower.
I might have missed that off in my third year.
So, and
don't do that.
She said, be kind to everyone because you don't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
And you don't know who you're going to work with. You don't know what working relationships can come from. I know that I benefited from contacts that I made in my year group. In my year and a half of emotional turmoil that I had after graduating.
But I think they are really important things. And I think as well, like also something to really consider is someone might be having a bad day and it's like, I don't know, I think you have to give people allowances. Like we're human, right? We do have the ability to be very logical and methodical, but also sometimes we're just raging hormone creatures. And I think, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt if they're having a bad day, you know, like get them to open up to you. My personal rule is, and it isn't something I've always done, but treat people with kindness and love. Try to be there for people in the best way that you can. Sometimes I don't always master it, you know? So yeah, just like when you have bad days and you don't succeed in something, you'd want allowances, give that to people too. Mm-hmm. So I think to go beyond what she said about being nice, actually be loving with people and yeah, be kind, because you know, we're not just collaborators, but we're people too. If you want really like good connections, and it can't just be shallow, it can't just be like, oh, I do something for you so you can do something for me, but actually deeply connect with that with the people around you. So yeah, to say be nice. And then I think showering, yes, is important, but I think that goes into the whole like looking after yourself mentally and physically, especially like if you want to be a producer or a director or a DOP. I'm just trying to think of like people that manage a lot of people, because if you're not looking after yourself, how would you be able to look after other people? Do you know? Mm-hmm. And then my third bit of advice that I would add on to Claire is pursue.
Bless
just like whenever you're making a film, just ask yourself, is this the truth? And intuition is the most important thing you have, but I think it's something that we're trained to ignore like constantly. But when you're making a film, it's great because actually you don't want like just logical sociopathic characters, you know, you want people that are raw and rough and human. And if something feels truthful to you, it might feel uncomfortable, but if it's truthful, probably tell tapping into something that's universal.
Are there any tips that you can give about working with actors? Any experiences that you've had at uni, post-uni, NFTS?
People have different approaches. I think the universal rule, like that I use for all departments, including actors, is to listen and see what people's approach is. Like, so if I'm talking to an actor, I'd ask them about the character, what do they think? What is their take on it? Yeah, and then I try to let them follow their intuition on how to go. But sometimes you do have to step in. And the other thing is like, which this might sound really obvious. Sorry, this might sound really obvious, but don't results direct, which is basically like, don't tell an actor to be happy, then be sad, then be angry, and give them like a series of an emotional map for them to follow through a scene. It's absolutely impossible. And I can't explain that very quickly, but a good tip would be like to talk about it as in, this moment is like that time that you rode a bike when you were with your granddad in the park. And that works a bit better, but I'm sorry, I can't. It's too big, and I'm too much of an amateur.
An even bigger question is, what's next for you? You're coming towards the end of your 2-year course.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position to these guys who are graduating, because I too don't know what's really going to happen. And I think that's really important to say, like, none of us do. I don't even think the industry knows what's going to happen. It's literally come to a standstill. Like, it's going to be crazy. Everyone's going to be trying to like make films at the same time. My plan, I'll tell you what my plan was, and God knows if it'll actually work. So I'm just beginning the process for my grad film. So NFTS year structures are a bit different. It goes from January to December. And I am working on my final big project, which is called our grad film. And I decided to do a horror film. And let me tell you, I've shocked myself with the type of things I've made. So I'm going to tell you about some of the projects I've made. Which is why my journey at UCA was so important to learning. Like, I don't want to make social realist films, but I do want to tell the truth. And for some reason in my head, I just always paired those things together. So I started at NFTS and I'd just done my dance project, and I liked it because it was just a bit unconventional. I did my first year film, which was a family drama, and it was very like, yeah, it's just narrative and traditional. So then I was doing my digifilm, and I decided to do something really unconventional and do a musical. Mm-hmm. And it's totally satirical and political, and it's about a UKIP supporting right-wing dad and his vegan, lesbian, university student daughter having an argument on Christmas Day, which becomes a musical. And it was totally batshit and in bad taste. And this is also the thing as well, like, love your bad taste. Love the films that they're like your guilty pleasure. Because actually I used to love musicals, but I got it in my head, like, for some reason that wasn't cool to do at UCA. Yeah, I think I still to a degree now, I still care too much what people think, but especially like when I was there, I used to care too much. So I just made this really like bad taste musical.
Bad taste how?
In the sense of like, it's like super tacky, like there's red streamers coming down in it, and the dad's like singing racist stuff, and the daughter's like very like, you can't say that, but she's also really offensive, and but the whole thing's satirical. So, but I would never have made something like this at UCA, you know? I would never have, because I am quite interested in politics, but I think the last way I would have expected to talk about politics is in a musical. So
how did you say you said that you wouldn't ever dream of making something like that when you were at UCA? Do you think that was a confidence thing, having confidence in the ideas that you had?
I don't know if it was a confidence thing. I just don't think I would have. It wasn't that UCA stopped me from doing that type of thing. I just didn't know that I wanted to do that type of thing when I was at UCA. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know who I was, and I still don't know who I am, but I know a bit more than what I used to know.
Yeah.
And I thought I had to make certain types of films because I'm working class and because I'm from Liverpool, and it just clicked that I don't have to. But again, this was a journey, and I'm saying this because it's like, don't worry if you don't like the films that you've made at UCA. It's fine. Like, it's a journey and it's a progression. And yeah, now I'm doing a witch film. So I'm doing a queer witch film, which is a horror, which is a period piece, because obviously I didn't learn from Decked that it's a nightmare to do.
We're in 1960s Liverpool.
It's set in 1605, but it's mostly exteriors. So I did learn from Decked, you know. It's not like I have to look for a lot of period accurate locations like I did for Decked anyway. But again, like, that's something that I never would have done at UCA. Like, I wouldn't have wanted to experiment. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you know, you might not see it now, but in hindsight, you're going to realize how much you've learned at UCA. Mm-hmm. So you will have grown so much, and it's just another step on your journey. And yeah, you might have had a few arguments on grad film. Yeah, you might have like made some stinkers. It's fine. It's part of the journey and it's part of your growth. It's fine. One day I promise you will laugh about it, but in the moment you won't want to. I also decided to do a horror film because I'm hoping after NFTS to try and make my first feature film. That's actually the direction I'm hoping to go in. Don't know if it'll work, but if you have a goal in mind, then I don't know. I'm not really afraid of failing, which actually is probably my advice to the people graduating now, third years and master students. Like, don't be afraid to fail. Like, honestly, you can always make another film, and be crazy, do crazy things. Don't be conventional. Don't care what other people think. Love your bad taste. This isn't one tip, I'm sorry, but
what stage of development are you with the feature film?
Oh, like, just so my graduation film that I'm making, I'm hoping will be like a springboard into a feature film, because horror is really having its moment at the moment. Be patient. It will work out, and it will. You have to have faith that it will.
It will, and then you'll end up getting a job at UCA. You know, after about 2.5 years, 2 years.
You've got a cushy job at UCA. I want a job. I want to get paid to make films. I'm like already thinking about doing a teacher's qualification as well to support myself. So yeah, It's not easy, but just be patient, and who knows, we'll get there eventually.
You're on the motorway, and there's many. Where am I going with this? You're on the M1, and there's many junctions ahead, and who knows where they'll lead.
Exactly.
Beaconsfield, Birmingham, Sheffield,
Great Yarmouth, Hemel Hempstead. No, I mean, yeah, it's just a journey, but and don't compare what you're doing to other people as well. It's massively unhelpful, actually. And if you want to direct and you didn't direct, you can still direct. That's another thing. Don't be put off because you haven't made a film. Just reach out to people. You never know. They might be interested.
There we go, episode 1. Emma, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to talk to me. I think she had some very important things to say there, some very good tips all round. I hope you enjoyed this. Please bear with me as I slowly get better at interviewing people. If there's any recommendations or anything else that you would like me to be aware of, then please let me know. Give me an email. If you've got any lo-fi beats, send them my way, and I'll stick them in. I'll stick them in the intro. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. It's going to be a weekly thing. It's going to be every Monday. I've recorded 10 or so far, and now I'm lining up the next batch of guests. So if there's any questions in particular that you would like asked, please drop me an email, andrew.newman@uca.ac.uk. But other than that, please stay safe, and I will see you soon.